Adolf Hitler was born in Austria on April 20th, 1889. He became interested in art at a young age and applied to the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts with the dream of becoming a painter, but was rejected twice. This rejection created deep disappointment and anger in Hitler's life. When World War I broke out in 1914, he voluntarily joined the German army and was noted for his bravery during the war. After becoming leader of Germany in 1933, Hitler established a totalitarian regime based on the ideology of the Nazi Party. During this period, horrific events took place that claimed the lives of millions of people. One of the most well-known and horrifying acts was the Holocaust. 6 million Jews were systematically murdered in gas chambers, concentration camps and ghettos. Roma, disabled people, political dissidents and other minority groups were also victims of this genocide. World War II, launched on Hitler's orders, became the most destructive conflict in history, killing around 70 million people. Josef Stalin went down in history as one of the most ruthless dictators of the 20th century. He was born into a poor family in Georgia in 1878. In his youth, he trained to become a priest, but after being introduced to Marxist ideologies, he chose a revolutionary path. He became the leader of the Soviet Union and soon monopolized power. Under Stalin's leadership, there were many tragedies that claimed the lives of millions of people in a process known as the Great Purge. Political opponents, members of the military and even ordinary citizens were executed or sent to labor camps called gulags on charges of espionage and treason. Around 1.5 million people lost their lives in this process. One of the most horrific events was the Holodomor in Ukraine in 1932-1933. As a result of Stalin's agricultural policies and forced collectivization, nearly 4 million Ukrainians starved to death. Instead of preventing this catastrophe, Stalin continued his policies and ignored the starving people. Genghis Khan is known as one of history's greatest and most ruthless conquerors. Born in 1162 in the steppes of Mongolia under the name Temujin, he experienced great hardship in his youth. His family made many enemies due to tribal conflicts. However, thanks to his intelligence and military skills, Temujin eventually united the other tribes to form the Mongol Empire and took the name Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan's conquests set the stage for some of the bloodiest and most destructive wars in history. They killed millions of people across a vast geography, from China and Central Asia to the Persian Empire and Eastern Europe. The Mongol army was notorious for speed and ruthlessness. Cities that offered resistance were completely destroyed and populations massacred. Genghis Khan aimed to facilitate his conquests by instilling fear through these methods. One of the most horrific events was his campaign against the Khwarezm Shah Empire. After the Khwarezm Shah ruler killed Genghis Khan's envoys, the Mongol army invaded the Khwarezm Shah lands in revenge. Cities such as Bukhara, Samarkand and Nishapur were completely destroyed and millions of people were put to the sword. Pol Pot is known as one of the bloodiest dictators in history, ruling Cambodia from 1975 to 1979 and leader of the Khmer Rouge. Born in 1925 in Cambodia, a French colony, he was introduced to Marxist ideologies when he went to France to study. Pol Pot's goal was to turn the country into a pure communist society. He forced everyone living in the cities to move to the countryside and work on collective farms. During this period, intellectuals or educated people, doctors, teachers, and even people wearing glasses were considered enemies and killed. As a result of Pol Pot's practices, nearly 2 million Cambodians died as a result of starvation, forced labor, disease, and mass executions. Tens of thousands of people were buried in mass graves in these killing fields, known as the Killing Fields. Pol Pot's brutal regime plunged the country into terrible chaos and misery. Nero reigned as the 5th emperor of the Roman Empire from 54-68 AD and has gone down in history for his cruelty and eccentricities. Born in 37, Nero was only 16 years old when he ascended the imperial throne and was initially under the influence of his mother Agrippina. However, he soon murdered his mother and seized power completely, and his ruthless rule began. One of his most famous events was the Great Fire in Rome in 64 AD. The city burned for days and was devastated. According to legend, Nero played the lyre and recited poetry as he enjoyed the fire. To escape responsibility, he blamed the Christians and had them brutally slaughtered. Nero's cruel actions caused him to be hated by the people and to go down in history as a cruel emperor. Eventually, as his power weakened, he was deposed by his enemies and fled. When he was about to be captured, he said, "What a great artist is dying," and took his own life. Ivan IV, aka Ivan the Terrible, ruled Russia from 1533 to 1584 and is known as one of the most ruthless rulers in history. Born in 1530, Ivan ascended to the throne after the death of his father, Grand Duke Vasily, when he was only 3 years old. During his childhood, he grew up in an environment full of intrigue and assassination attempts. In 1547, he was crowned as the first Russian Tsar and initiated large-scale reforms to strengthen centralized authority. But the second half of Ivan's reign was a terrible period. In 1560, the sudden death of his beloved wife Anastasia had a profound effect on Ivan's mental health. He began to rule with paranoia and violent tendencies. He established a special police force called the Oprichnina and ruthlessly eliminated the boyars, noblemen, who opposed him. Thousands of people were tortured, exiled, or killed in Moscow and the surrounding regions. One of Ivan's most horrific acts was the massacre of the city of Novgorod as punishment. In 1570, when the city was accused of treason against the Tsar, Ivan and his army killed thousands of people and sacked the city. The fact that he even killed his own son in a fit of rage is seen as the height of his cruelty. This event was an important factor in earning Ivan the nickname the Terrible.